GFCI. What does it mean? What is it? How do I hook mine up? Well, it's a ground fault circuit interrupter. I'm sure that helped a lot. What it does is it was invented as a safety measure, and well, let's talk about your circuits in your house first. This is your breaker box, and usually big wires come in, could come in the top or the bottom, but really thick gauge wires come in, and there's what's called a L1 and an L2. One of those is, well, they're both typically 60 hertz, 115 volts, but L1 and L2 are out of phase by 180 degrees. So if you use them together for power, it's going to total 230 degrees, or 230 volts, sorry. They're out of phase by 180 degrees, so when you basically add them together when you're using them together, and that's 230 volts. They come into your breaker box, and basically there's a pattern of steel behind here where L1 and L2, every other circuit is plugged into L1 or L2, and it keeps changing so that any two circuits together that are side by side, up and down, will be a 220 or 230 circuit, and that can be used for things like ovens and electric dryers, electric ovens, electric heaters. Those typically take the higher voltage, but GFCI is generally just used for regular 115 volt outlets. Let's talk about the wires that come out of the box. So we talked big wires come in, two different phases, and then aside from the breakers, along the side, sometimes along the bottom, you'll see these terminal strips, and you can basically plug like 20 or 30 wires into that. It has little screws on it, and you stick the wire in and you screw down the screw, and it clamps onto the wire. And so in your Romex cable, which is typically 14 gauge or 12 gauge, it comes with a yellow insulation cover on it, and 12 gauge is for like a 20 amp circuit breaker, and 14 gauge is for and that comes in a white wrapper, and that's for a 15 amp breaker, and it has 3 wires inside. If you're gonna meet code these days, you've got to have 3 wires. One is black, and that goes to the circuit breaker. That's going to be the hot wire. If you have a 220 cable, it'll have 4 wires inside. There'll be a black one and a red one, and those are going to hook to L1 and L2 on a double breaker. But then whether you have 220 or 110, you're going to have a copper wire, or sometimes it's green, and that's called ground. That's the earth ground. And then there'll be a white wire, and that's called the common, and that'll go to the common terminals. So earth, and they could be on different sides, different places, and so forth, but you'll see all of the white wires hooked to one strip, and all the copper or green wires hooked to another strip, and then you'll see both of these connected to either one of these, a third wire that comes in here that could be the ground supplied by the utility, or you might see a ground wire going down out of the box and connecting to both of these strips, and that one could be going to a big spike in the earth. That's an earth ground. So this isn't about that. This video is not about earth ground or grounds. I'm just explaining the different wires in the box and how everything's connected. But you see that because these two are connected together, whenever you go to an outlet inside the house, the white wire and the ground wire, which is either copper or it might be green insulation, those are actually going to have continuity. If you stick your ohmmeter between the copper and the green and the white, and the white, you should get 0 ohms because they're connected together here inside the box. Okay, so all that's to help you figure out which wire is which when you're inside. Now you're inside the house with your outlet box, and you've got actually 2 sets of wires coming in. I show these wires going out over here, so the hot wires come in from the outlet box. The GFCI, they go to the GFCI, but then GFCI, they go to the line side. So there's terminals here called line. If you look on the back of your GFCI, we're going to look at one in a minute, you can read, and this could be on top or bottom. The load and the line can be switched, but the line is the hot one coming from the breaker box. The load is goes to any other outlets in the same room, like this could be a kitchen or a bathroom. Some place where there's water, typically the code requires GFCI protection. GFCI protection is going to protect whatever's plugged into this GFCI outlet, plus any downstream things that are connected at the load side of the GFCI, the load terminals here. And the terminals for the black wires are typically gold, and the ones for the white wires are silver. And then the copper or the green wire hooks to the green terminal. That's the ground. So if you look at the 3 things on a typical outlet, this is the white side, this is the black side, and this is the ground or green side or copper side. Okay, and what does that ground do? Why is that ground in the outlet anyway? Because the power comes from these two, and really old outlets don't even have this one. Well, this was put in so that if I have, say, a table saw or something that's all metal and I plug it in and somehow this wire loses its insulation and touches the metal frame, then I could get shocked if it wasn't for this, because the saw is going to have a terminal coming from here, a wire coming from here and connected to the frame, and if this black wire from this part of the outlet touches the frame, I could get shocked, except that no, I'm not going to get shocked because it's going to short directly to this ground and it's going to go back here and trip the breaker. So that's why that 3rd wire was added. And then the reason the GFCI was added as a new requirement is it's possible to still be shocked even though you have this ground terminal here. Like if I have my hairdryer plugged in and I drop it in the bathtub, that water in the bathtub could shock me if I'm in the tub if it weren't for this GFCI. What the GFCI does is it looks at the black and the white terminals, and it looks for the current on both. And if they're not the same, then some current is going somewhere else, like through someone's body, or it might be going, there might be an animal like a rabbit chewing on a cord in the room, and if anything goes back through this, any current goes back through this copper wire, the GFCI is going to say, hey, the current on these two aren't the same, stop. It's going to click, and I'll show you the little test and reset buttons on it. It's going to click, and it's going to cut off the power to not only this one, but all of these over here. However many outlets you have connected to the load side, it's going to cut those all off until you reset the GFCI, because somebody got shocked, or somebody got it wet, got the appliance wet, or whatever. So that's the additional protection that's afforded by GFCI, and this is how it's hooked up. And don't get these. So when you're inside the box, you're going to see these wires too going out to some other outlets, right? When you're in the GFCI box, you're typically going to see two Romexes come in. One is the one from the breaker box, and the other one is actually going out, but you can't tell which one is which until you test it, actually, because the line one is going to be hot. These wires are not going to be hot. This black one specifically, this black one will be hot because it's the circuit breaker's on back here. But until this other black one is hooked up here, it's going to be cold. So let's go look at that. Over here I've got an outlet, and let's turn some lights on. Okay, here's the GFCI outlet, and I've already disconnected. Actually, that's the load. Somebody was really nice and they marked these two cables, but usually when you open your box, it's not going to have nice labels on this that say load and line. And on here, the GFCI, that makes it really easy, because you gotta be careful here. If you can read that, it says load right there, and down there it says line. I'm not sure if they're in English or not, but so this is the load side, and so if here I have a voltmeter. Let's stand it up right there, and let's turn it on. Okay, that's AC, and that's turned to volts. So if I take these two leads and I put one on the negative side and one on this wire, if it was hot, if that wire was hot, that would say 120 volts or 115 volts, something like that. You can see it's not. So let's try the line wire. The terminals for the line wire are down here. Try not to get shocked. I can actually use these holes just to measure. Okay, let's see. Yeah, 118.8. So now I know that this wire is the line. If I didn't have that label, I would still know it because I tested it. And the other one is the load because it tests 0. So watch where they come in. So the white wire associated with I can't just hook this white wire up here. Okay, this is the line, and it has to have both the hot wire and the white wire from the cable that goes back, and that's this one that goes back to the breaker box. So that's going to go on the line where it is there. And the whites are on this side, and if you notice, if you look carefully at the colors, the screws on this side are gold and the screws on this side are silver. Okay, that's, so the silver usually takes the white wires and the gold takes the black wires. I'm sorry, there's some paint on this wire that makes it look white, but it's really black. Both of these wires are black and they're going on these gold. So once I connect this back up to here, then all of my outlets in the kitchen are going to be connected. Right now they're not, because the load has not been connected on this terminal. This whole, most of this room is on one circuit. I can see those wires are actually, the cables are actually yellow back there, so it's a 20 amp circuit. This appliance is on a different circuit. It's probably got its own circuit because it's a 1200 watt microwave, and this has a gas burner on top, but it's an electric oven, so that has its own circuit, a 220 circuit. And these lights are on, the lights are all on a different circuit as well. But the outlets, most of these outlets are connected through this load wire here. This goes out that way, and or it might go that way, I'm not sure. But there's outlets all over this kitchen. And there's actually, to be honest, this, you might find this and you should know this. There's another GFCI outlet. So there's another circuit in this kitchen that can handle more. So it might be that this one is connected to this outlet and this outlet and this outlet, and it might be that this one, this GFCI, connects to these other three outlets. That's probably how it's, I'm just guessing, but they did a nice job on this wiring, so sometimes I guess all right. So so now what do I have to do? Well, once I've identified the line, and maybe I mark it so I know, or it's on the left here, the load is on the right, then I might go to the breaker box and turn that breaker off so that I can now connect this up without getting shocked. I do it a lot while it's hot, but it, you know, I don't like getting shocked, so I would turn that off. Then I would connect this back up and I would push the wires in and reinstall the outlet into the box and put the cover on and have a nice day. These things do break down. Oh, I forgot to show. So when they quit working, you have to buy a new one. And since this has got a 20 amp wires, I would make sure that it's a 20 amp outlet that I buy. 20 amp GFCI. They make them both in 20 and 15. And if you look carefully on here, okay, the little black button says test. What does that do? It forces some of the current to go down the, I forgot to talk about the copper wire. So the copper wire is the earth ground, and the one from the load is wrapped around this one from the breaker box, and once they're together there, that's fine. Then this one connects to the green terminal at the bottom down here of the GFCI. And where does that go? That connects to these bottom parts, which aren't normally supposed to carry current. If they do, it's going to set off the breaker. Or if it's just a little bit and not 20 amps, 20 amps worth of current through this is going to throw the breaker, but less than 20 amps, but you know, more than, if it's half an amp or even a couple amps or whatever that might be going through a human, The GFCI is going to recognize that, and it's going to blow like that. And that's what, and when it does, the reset button pops out. So right now there's no current anywhere in this circuit because this is tripped. So that's how you test it, and you should test it every once in a while, make sure it's still working. And then to reset it, you've got to push the red button in really hard, and when you do, it'll reset. And you see the button's in now, the red button. So that's how you test it, that's how you hook it up. Enjoy your GFCIs.